And we're back.
We're back, finally.
A
It's been
lot
a
of
minute, you guys. Welcome
right.
back.
Welcome back.
Gosh.
Welcome everybody to the One Day Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alan.
And I'm Lizelle, for any of our new listeners
Mm-hmm.
out there. Yeah, it's been a while since we've
Yeah.
recorded. Reason being was, I think, yeah, we've been a little bit inconsistent, and we do apologize in advance. But I think the major reason was that, like, stuff got really busy for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've just been doing a lot of things behind the scenes,
Yep.
some very exciting things that are also very overwhelming as
Oh
well.
yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Which I'm sure you guys will find out more about that in due
For
time.
sure.
And then, yeah, and I think for me, I honestly got a little bit burnt out and I ended up getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't able to record on our regular schedule as we usually do.
Right.
But we are back today, and what are we talking about today, love?
Today we're gonna talk about, well, it's my cheat sheet. Just topics that just the stuff that you need to talk about before you guys get married. So anyone there that's
Yeah.
pretty serious, that's engaged, or like going towards that direction where you guys are committed and this is what you already know that that's the road you're going to. These are things that I think you guys should definitely talk about. Because it's weird if you don't talk about these stuff and you get into it later on. You're like, hey, I didn't know you wanted that, or I didn't know you didn't want that. So these are just stuff that topics that you guys should talk about. And clearly for us, we spoke about way even before we spoke about some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically it's just a culmination of like things to kind of discuss if you're like serious in your relationship, or I guess you could center it around marriage.
Yeah.
But this can be for anybody. You don't
Yeah.
have to be like in the process of like getting married to be able to talk about this stuff. And yeah, like you said,
Right.
this is stuff that we naturally spoke about very early on in our
Yeah.
relationship, and I think the fact that we're long distance kind of aided in that. I don't think these are topics that naturally would come up in like regular conversation very early on in a relationship,
Right.
unless of course it was like getting serious early. But
Right.
I think for us, because it's like all we could do was talk,
Exactly.
these were things that we came to speak about. And if you think about it, yeah, if you are in that stage of your relationship where you are thinking about spending the rest of your life with this person, I think these are things that are important to know. It's important to talk about these things and kind of get a gauge of like where you're at with each other, what your viewpoints are, what you want, what you don't want. I think that's very important. And again, it's like major key in a relationship is communication. So
Right.
yeah, we're just going to be kind of talking about like what we feel is important to talk about before you get married. But before we get into that, I kind of want to talk about my viewpoints on marriage because
Oh,
for me
yeah.
personally, yeah, I never wanted to get married. I don't know. I've always had this idea that I don't need to be married in order to prove my love for another person or to show how much I love that person or how committed I'm going to be to
Right.
that person, because I believe that whether I'm married to you or not, I'm going to treat you exactly the same. Like, I'm going to have the same love and respect towards you as I would if we were married with a ring on our fingers and with that piece of paper signed than if we weren't. To me, I always had this viewpoint that marriage is just a piece of paper, but in recent years, I feel like my opinion on that has changed. Because, yeah, I just always was like, I don't need a wedding. I don't need a ring. I don't need a piece of paper. Like, I'm committed to you already. Like, what more is there to it? But in saying that, like, oh, it's just a piece of paper, so is like money, so is a deed for a house, so is a car note,
Yeah,
so
those are
is
pretty important stuff.
a bank account statement. Yeah, so is a birth
Yeah.
certificate. Like, there's so many things that
Yeah.
are just pieces of paper,
Mm-hmm.
but they hold value within them. And I
For
think
sure.
that's where I kind of read more into it and was like, okay, yeah, I understand now the value behind that piece of paper. And I still do believe that, you know, marriage was created by society to make money. That
That's
is still my
exactly my thought in
view.
the beginning too.
Yeah.
Because everything's man-made, right? So like
Yeah.
my view is like, well, why is there so many divorces? There's so many. So why do we need to get married? We could just be married and treat each other like we're married instead of like having a piece of paper. I felt in the same position as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there definitely is. There's a reason why there's these pieces, important pieces of document. You know,
Yeah, and it is stuff that has been created by society,
right?
but it does hold they like these pieces of paper as we call them, like they do hold value behind them. But I still stand by the fact that I don't need a piece of paper for me to
Mm-hmm.
be committed to that person, or for me
Right.
to be faithful or
Mm-hmm.
honest or in love with that person. Like,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether I have that piece of paper or that ring or whatever it may be that is a symbol of a unity of a marriage, I'm still going to love you as much as I do
Right.
without that. But yeah, I think my feelings towards marriage have definitely changed being with you.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted, like, I tell you guys, I never wanted to get married before. I
She
was like,
definitely didn't. She
I don't
said it.
need
I
to.
remember you saying that to me in the beginning. And not that I was
Yeah.
like, I wasn't thrown back at, what you said. It's just sometimes some people feel that way, and I totally get it. I'm completely open to it. If she said she doesn't want to get married, all I care was that we're still going to be together, right? We're still going to be,
Yeah.
that's it. That's all I cared about. But it's very important.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, to any ladies out there, or guys who may be listening, if someone is telling you, like, oh, it's just a piece of paper, or like, we need that. Okay, so if it's just a piece of paper, let's just go get it then. If it doesn't mean anything, then it shouldn't mean
Exactly.
anything whether we have it or whether we don't. So, yeah, I just feel like it's a bit of a red flag if a guy is like, oh, it's just a piece of
Just a
paper.
piece of paper.
And it's like, okay, well, let's just go get it then. If it doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything, like, it shouldn't matter. But then I guess some people may be wondering, well, then why are you guys getting married? Because we want to. Like,
Right.
perhaps the reason why I never wanted to get married before was because I just hadn't found the right person that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to. But yeah, again, I always said from the beginning that I don't need to get married. Like, marriage, it's just a
Right.
money thing. Like, we don't need that. But in terms of us being in long distance and then eventually being together,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we're going to be on the same team, like, that's, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was surprised she wanted my last name. Remember?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. It's like if I'm going to marry you and we're going to be, like I said, a team,
Mm-hmm.
we got to have the same name. Like,
True.
we're teammates. Like,
Gotta
we're on
have
the
that
same
same name
team.
in our jersey.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
one jersey. This is our home team. We got to get the same
yeah,
name in the
yeah.
back.
Yeah. So, oh, it gets me really giddy talking. I get like really like ooh, talking
Yeah.
about it. But
Speaking of
yeah.
which, like you said, you have to you just have to feel like that's the right person, right? So the first thing
Mm,
that I want to talk about and what you guys should talk about before getting married or getting serious is kids, having kids. I'd say
yes.
that's one of the biggest things too, because like there's a lot
Yeah.
of cases that people just don't talk about. Like I don't know why. First of all, I don't. If you're getting into a relationship, I just think that that's something you need to talk about. Like if the other person wants kids or if you want kids.
I agree. I think it is important because, yeah, like not everybody is the same. Not everybody
Right.
wants the same things. So I feel like on the basis of getting to know what the other person
Mm-hmm.
like wants and how they are, if you're getting serious, like, yeah, it probably is something to talk about. I don't know, at the age that we are now, Yeah, I think it is important to discuss like whether
Mm-hmm.
kids are something that you want to have as an option in the future. I think for us, because for those of you guys who don't know, I'm pretty sure everybody knows by now,
Mm-hmm.
but Alan does have a daughter.
Yep.
And obviously, I knew that from the very beginning. So that
Mm-hmm.
clearly wasn't an issue for me. I know there are some people out there who don't want to get into relationships with people that have kids from a
Mm-hmm.
previous relationship. And there's nothing wrong with that, each to their own. But for me, it like she's a part of you and I love her just as much as I love you, so
Right.
it wasn't an issue for me. And again, this is like another thing that I was like, I
Right.
don't want.
That's exactly why I brought this up. The
Oh
first topic
gosh.
was that because, like
Yeah.
you said in the beginning, number one, you didn't want to get married, and then number
Uh-huh.
two, you didn't want kids. I remember you voiced that out in the beginning, and you felt like that strongly because you said, you know what, my feelings starting to change because I do feel like I'm with the right person to do it with. So that's why I was like, that matters.
Yeah, I just always had this feeling of like I don't know. I never felt like I wanted to have kids. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. I don't know if I just hadn't been with the right person, if I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like at that stage of my life where I was feeling like maternal, like I wanted
Mm.
to have children. But I think from like what I've done in terms of like self-reflection, yeah, I felt like I just hadn't met the right person that I wanted to have kids with
Right.
because yeah, I just always felt like I don't want to have kids. Like I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
kids person, but I realize now like damn, I am a kids person. Like I
You
love
are.
kids.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
love my daughter. Like she, the cool thing is the way it all like your relationship with her is really really good. Like how we did it was so, how can I say it? Very organic. You know, it wasn't
Yeah.
forced. It was just
Mhm.
really smooth. You know, and she, as much as you love her, she loves you back the same way.
Mm.
And having that feeling and us talking about having kids since the beginning, it you know, I can't wait. I can't wait to have more. You know, we grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up with a big family, so we're always like family oriented. So we
Mhm.
always wanted more kids and stuff like that. So and I grew up. I'm like the youngest of three, so it's cool to grow up with an older sibling. My brother's a year
Mhm.
older than me, and my sister's only a year older than my brother. So we're really really close to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, so having that experience and having a big family makes me want to have kids. And again, if you guys don't talk about it, you know, imagine if Lizelle like didn't want to and she didn't voice that out, and we got together and you're like, "Hey, I wanted more kids." You remember?
Yeah, or
Imagine.
like imagine if I was like, "Oh, he has a child, like I want to have kids." And then you're like, "But I'm
I'm
done." Like
done.
I don't want to have
Exactly.
like imagine
Right.
that. So I think it's really really important to
You
talk
know,
about.
the perfect example, and I don't know if everyone really never watched the show,
I
but
already
we
know what you're going to
we
say.
watched the
I already know
show,
what you're going to
and
say.
I'd say that's probably the only episode we know because you know, it's such a big he's such a big character, right? So
Mhm.
there's a character named Big Ed
On
in
90 Day
90 Day
Fiancé.
Fiance, and
Mhm.
him and the partner he had at the time, like, you know, he had like a how old was Ed's daughter, Big Ed? She's
I
in
don't know, but he was like
late
50
20s.
something and the girlfriend was like 20 something.
Right.
So there's like a 30 or so year age difference
Right.
between them. And she was like
And
at that stage where she wants to have kids.
yeah.
And he was like, okay, yeah. But in the back of the mind, he was like, I don't want to have
Yeah,
kids.
they
So
didn't even communicate. They didn't, like, for the
yeah.
ones that didn't watch the show, you guys could watch this later on. But like they didn't speak about, like, he wanted a vasectomy, remember?
Well,
And
they did speak about it, but he lied to her, if you
because
remember.
you're right, right. So it's
Mm.
if you don't talk about it, you know, it's really important. That's one thing I know you guys have to talk about is kids, having kids or not having kids. It still needs to be discussed regardless.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like, okay, if you don't want kids, it's okay to
Yeah,
say that too. Like,
yeah, of
you should
course.
never be in a situation where you feel like you can't
Mm-hmm.
state what it is that you want. But I feel like for each other, it's important to say that because I think it's pretty selfish to sit there and be like, yeah, yeah, babe, like, yeah, I want kids. And
Right.
then they're like, okay, so when are we gonna have these kids? And they're like, gosh, like, I don't really want kids. Like, it's important to discuss that. So yeah, I feel like we spoke about that very early on, just because
Mm-hmm.
naturally you have a daughter. That's the difference in this situation, is that yeah, I always felt like I don't want to have kids, but I think it really goes to show that you have to meet the right person who you want to do those
Mm-hmm.
things with.
Yep.
And it's, yeah, it's just crazy because I was definitely that person that was like, I don't need to get married. I don't need to have kids. And then it was like I met you and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to get married. I want to have kids with you. Like
Right.
it's just wild. So yeah, definitely is very important to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. And low key or maybe high key, if you guys don't know, Lizelle actually, she's really good with kids. So like for her to not want any kids
Oh,
before, she's really great with kids. So I can't wait to like, you know, the rest of my family, because we have a big family. We have a lot of kids. Wait till they meet her. Wait till we have our own, and I can't wait.
yeah, I'm excited for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, the next thing that is important to discuss, I feel like this is a big thing as well, is finances.
Yeah.
I know that some people get uncomfortable when it comes to talking about money,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it's important to discuss it because it can prevent a lot of arguments
A
from
lot.
happening. So I think for us, we talk about saving and spending
For
and
sure.
budgeting
Mm-hmm.
and future plans in terms
Yeah.
of money and investing and things like that.
I think the leg up that we had since the beginning
Mm.
is because we are in a long distance relationship, right? Like we
Yeah, true.
knew what to save for our next trip, what we're going to
Mm.
do at that trip, what we want to send each other. So we kind of had to be open to like say, hey, we need to put this much away for this trip. We want to go here for that trip. We want to do these type of activities. So it was kind of a I guess a blessing, and it was not uncomfortable at
Yeah.
all. I mean, you have to talk as a couple. You guys have to talk about finance. That's something that growing up. I don't know if it's culture, like our culture or anything, that your parents, you don't never really hear them talk about finance, and I
Yeah.
never did. And
Mm.
now it's like I'd say it's important to talk among each other, and when you have kids as well, just to give them a heads up and like show them the value of like money and finance and how you should spend your money, how you should save your money. Again, I I'm not I made a pretty good penny like to do what I do, and having Lizelle, I'd say I'm probably way better saver now than before. So like I definitely finance, even because I was open with her, I was able to save a lot more, and it helped me out. And plus, again, going to trips and seeing each other helped a lot.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of had no
Hmm.
choice because talking about like certain trips and stuff, it was like,
Right.
okay, is this like something that we can go with? Like, you
Hmm.
can't just be planning all these like extravagant trips and then the other person's like, oh my gosh, I can't afford this. Like,
Right.
I feel like being long distance, it kind of forced us, like you said, it was like
Hmm.
a kind of like a blessing in disguise
Hmm.
because it kind of nudged us to talk about finances
Yep.
like earlier on in the relationship.
Yeah.
Even though Alan and I haven't lived together yet, it's like we live together, but we don't because we're
Right.
very open in terms
Very
of
open.
like,
Hmm.
so, uh, yeah, finances are definitely an important thing to discuss. And like, we've even discussed like our plans for the future in terms of like investments that we want to make.
Hmm.
Um, the way that we even want to structure like certain bank accounts and things
True.
like that. Like,
We have, and it's really important now that like for myself, I work for myself, so like I have to inform and let Lizelle know like what I need to open up and how I need to pay myself, just structuring everything. We're building so many things in the future that I need to let her know how I want to run my business and our business. So she has to know all these things. And plus, since I'm not good at bills, I know she's really organized. I'm gonna have her organize all that stuff anyways, so everything's automatic.
Another thing I wanted to touch on is that it's important to not have assumptions when it comes to money. In terms of, like, for example, if we were to live together and we moved in with each other, and it's like, are we splitting everything 50-50? Am I
Right.
paying for this set of bills and are you paying for this set of bills? Am I only taking care of this and you're taking care of that? Like, there's just so many things to
Yeah.
discuss. And I feel like it's important to sit down and really plan everything out, even
Yeah.
write it down on a piece of paper and be like, okay, these are our expenses, these are mine, these are yours, these are our joint expenses. How do we want to go about, like,
Yep.
settling through all of these? It gets a little bit messy when things become assumed and people assume, like, oh, well, I thought you were going to pay for that, or
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's not like you have to sit there and be like, oh, well, I paid for the last dinner out, so
Exactly.
now
It's
you
your
got to pay
turn.
for the next dinner, which is like $52.76. So you got to cover, like, no, it's just, it's whatever works for each couple. Every couple has a different dynamic, and I feel like it's important to discuss that, because you don't want to be assuming things and then the other person's like salty about the way that things are being spent or whatever. So yeah, I feel like it's important to discuss finances,
For
especially if you
sure.
guys are living together. So that leads into this is such like a random turnaround of topics, but intimacy and sex. I feel
Yep.
like this is important to talk about, you guys.
That's very true.
Naturally, how do I put this? Like, again, you don't want to leave anything to be assumed, and communication is key. Communication is very important.
Right.
So I feel like, I mean, okay, it's not like we're going to sit there and draw up a contract and have a calendar of like, okay, how many times a week do we expect to get intimate with each other and have
Right.
sex? And I don't mean as in like, okay, I expect to have sex like this many times a week. You could be as blunt as that,
Can.
but I mean, as in, like, even down to talking about how you want to spend your time together, intimate time that you get to spend together. I hope I'm making sense when I say this, because I know that, for example, couples who have kids, that changes everything. It's really
It does.
difficult to find time to be alone
does.
together and have like quality, intimate time together.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if both of you have communicated with each other like what you would like, then you're on the same page of knowing what to expect, if that makes sense. So
Well,
do you have
for,
anything to add to
yeah,
that?
for me, it's always like when you're in a relationship, it's always an agreement, right? Like you always have
Yeah.
to agree in the beginning, hey, this is what we're heading towards. This topic alone, you have to talk about this because a lot of couples, a lot of older couples, their intimacy like goes down. Like they don't even like sometimes they
When you
don't even
say
sleep in the
older
same room.
couples,
Like
but when you
like
say
been
older
in
couples, what do you mean?
like just down the line once they're married and they're like 5, 10 years down the line, a lot
Okay.
of them their intimacy goes down, and it's
Yeah.
because it's something that they don't speak about. It's more like does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
I get what you're saying.
so if it's something that you agreed on since the beginning, hey, this is how we're gonna spend time. This is like again like you said, it's weird to like have a schedule like whip out like your planner
Like, okay, babe, we're scheduled in for this
here,
time on this
this
day.
time, this position, like So it's no, but it's still something that, as grown as a couple, as a union, right? You have to talk about these type of things, because again, that other person might feel like, oh, that person don't like me, like don't want me anymore. They don't
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
accepted. Oh, they're looking at this person. I'm like, the other person. If you guys don't speak at all, there's a lot of assumptions that could be made. So
Definitely,
you
yeah.
definitely have to speak to your partner in the beginning, and if it gets to the point where, hey, you know what, I feel like we haven't been intimate as much, bring it up. It's
Yeah, I
just
was about to say
communication.
that.
All you have to do is talk to your partner and say, hey, you know what, nudge them. Like again, it's like what our last topic or our last subject was, just a gauge, right? Like you have to gauge your partner, you have to communicate with them, because if there's something that you don't like, you have to talk to them and communicate that with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
And I feel like sex and intimacy is a very important aspect within not just marriage, but any relationship. I
Yeah.
feel like it is very important. It's that like connection that you have with that
Hmm.
person, that intimate connection. So I feel like yeah, when certain needs aren't being met
Yeah.
between the two of you, that's when, you know, naturally disagreements could occur or situations could arise. And I
Hmm.
feel like, yeah, like you said, communication is key. Even talking about like if I don't know, if you're in the position where you feel like you're not being intimate anymore, or you're not getting as much intimacy with your partner, it's important to bring it up. And you should
Yeah.
be in a relationship where you can bring it up and no arguments will arise or nobody's
Right.
going to get
Hmm.
offended because it's just all about communicating and discussing like what you
How
want and
you
what you need.
feel.
Because if
Yeah.
yeah, because if the other person thinks like, okay, well I guess they're okay with like not
Right.
being intimate and having sex, like I guess we'll just coast along and we're chilling, and then the other
Hmm.
person's like thinking the same thing, and then before you know it you guys drift apart. And yeah, I feel like, again, we say
That
this
other.
in every episode, but communication is
Hmm.
key.
Yeah, I think majority of all the topics that we're going to talk about is all communication. It's
Mm.
communication prior to getting married and while you're in marriage. So it's
Yeah,
very important.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, we'll be blunt. This is definitely stuff that we've talked about,
Of course.
that we've spoken about in our relationship. And yeah, like we said, it's not about like planning down to days or like, okay, so we're going to schedule it for this day and this day and this day. And then, like, I just feel like it's important to discuss with your partner, like, what you like and
Hmm.
what you don't like.
Right.
And I'm even talking about like in the bedroom, talking about like, yeah, what you like and what you don't like as
Exactly.
well. Not just like how often you want to do things, but
Hmm.
yeah, what you like and what you don't like, I feel like is really important. And like I always say, you should be in a relationship where you are comfortable enough to do that and you can do it without being judged or without
Hmm.
having any like other repercussions occur. So I
Yeah.
feel like yeah, as much as people assume things, like naturally in relationships, it's just very easy to assume certain things. Like, okay, they're giving me the hint, like that means they wanted today. But I feel like it sometimes it is very important to also verbalize things as well and
Right.
have like verbal discussions and communication regarding certain things, sex being one of them. So that's definitely important.
Right.
But moving on to the next topic,
Hmm.
which is something that we've discussed as well, is like your household.
Yeah.
And I know this sounds very broad. And for Alan and I, we are yet to live together,
Hmm.
being that we are long distance. But again, this is something that we've spoken about because, you know, when we're talking to one another and manifesting certain scenarios and things that we envision for our future together, this is something that we definitely talk
Hmm.
about. So, in regards to household, for me, that term kind of goes along the lines of like the way that we would run the household
Yeah.
and how we would maintain it. What's an example I can put to this? Like just the upkeep of it,
For sure.
the style of it, like
Hmm.
decor wise, things like that. I feel like is important. Oh my gosh, you know what I just remembered? I just remembered that video that I sent you of the girl who was like when your boyfriend's decor aesthetic doesn't fit in with yours and she has like
Oh
really
yeah.
nice home and then
Just a
he's got like a
random,
Star Wars figurine.
a random Star Wars. Like
Yeah.
it looks all modern, and there's like one thing that's sticking out of like it doesn't make sense to it. You know. Yeah. We. I think.
Right.
I think we definitely spoke about style,
Mm-hmm.
our personal style, how we want to run it. Even today,
Mm-hmm.
we spoke about like household. If you don't remember, we were
When?
talking about like I might like for me growing up in New England and Massachusetts, it wasn't fun doing shoveling the snow or it
Oh
wasn't
yeah, we were
fun
talking about
raking the
this.
leaves. And when I told Lizelle, once we move together, maybe I was like, I don't know if I could move to where there's a lot of like there's a lawn and there's a lot of upkeep because I grew up doing it. So it's not like the fun part about like the upkeep of the household. And she was like, you know what?
See, I loved
I'll
it.
do it. she
Yeah,
she jumped
I
up and
love
said, you know
doing
what?
that.
I'll do it. I'm like, Yeah, it might work because she does like to do the upkeep. She might want to garden. I'll help her to do that. I'll help her to rake the leaves. I mean, we're gonna have to do everything, but it was fun. We made it fun growing up. You know, those are the things that you guys have to talk about, like who's gonna wash the dishes, like,
Yeah.
and what I'm excited about, and I know why I don't mind talking about household and organization, is because I'm talking to the person that loves to organize. So like, you know what? I can't wait till she like set in a system for the household because I know how organized Lizella is and how clean she is and how her upkeep is amazing. So it's like it's really impeccable. So for me, I can't wait for her to like have a system in the household. You know, everything's gonna be just like organized. So yeah, I
Yeah,
can't
I
wait.
mean, that's just what I'm into, so
Yeah,
it's
and you know
only
what?
easy.
It's a habit for you, right? Like you, I've lived with a lot of people. I've been to like a lot of people's houses. Trust me, you're like the most organized person I know. So it's like for me, I can't wait for that upkeep, and it's gonna be simple because you've lived like that for for a long time. So
And again, like I feel like it's important to talk to your partner about these things.
yeah,
I feel like yeah, sometimes that can be like a number one trigger for arguments is when you feel as though your partner is not keeping up
right.
their half, or not that it's like half half, but
Well,
I
it's
mean
just
as
what they
in
said. They're gonna do.
yeah, but not even that. Like, even if you guys haven't discussed like
Hmm.
what you've said you're gonna do, and if it's assumed like, oh well, she likes to clean, she's cleaning all the time, so I'm gonna let her do it.
Right.
But in her mind, she's like, damn, he never helps me, and she's
Right.
like frustrated about it. And if you guys aren't communicating that and
Right.
like
Right.
talking about it, then nothing's gonna change. And I
Right.
feel like it doesn't necessarily have to manifest into an argument where you guys are like arguing with one another, feeling like, oh, you never helped me with the housework, and then
Right.
somebody's left feeling bad. And but I feel like it's still important to discuss it like in a healthy way, to be like,
Hmm.
hey, do you think you could help me with this, or if
Right.
I do this, can you do this, type of thing. I feel like is really important because
Hmm.
like a household is like a business. Like, okay, you guys are a
Hmm.
team. I don't mean to put it into like a business term, but I feel like you guys are a team and it's important for you guys to maintain your space, and
Yeah.
that takes teamwork. I feel
It
like it
does.
shouldn't be just left to one person, and that's not me saying that everything has to be split 50-50,
Hmm.
but it still is a nice gesture to obviously help each other out. And I feel like if you're both putting in the effort to get things
Hmm.
done, it's like that saying, many hands makes for light work, or something like that,
Hmm.
where it's like the more people helping, like the easier the workload
Yeah.
is. So
Yeah.
it's really important to discuss that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to clear it up earlier, like what she said. I want to piggyback on what you said. I
What's
know
that?
you love cleaning. I know that's
Uh-huh.
something that you're good at, organization.
Mm.
It's not like I'm over here, yes, like yeah, I scored. I found someone that just could clean the house every day, every week.
Yeah.
No, it's about it's not like agreements that you guys should make is like, okay, well, if I cook, then you wash the dishes, or if you cook, I wash the dishes. Like simple
Right.
little things like that, you know. And then I know growing up for my household, growing up, we had like every Sundays we wash the car, clean all the rooms, bath, every single room, all that stuff. Like rake the leaves, plow the snow. So we're gonna create a tradition and culture like that for our household. So we spoke about that already too. So it's just
Yeah.
important, just communication, like you said earlier.
Definitely. And again, it's really important to discuss because I feel like, yeah, I've heard of a lot of
Yeah.
couples getting into disagreements about the fact, feeling like their partner isn't on the same page as them
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the way that they would like the household to be
Right.
maintained or run. So I feel
I
like
I think
it's
over
really
the
important.
decade it changed, no? Because like back
What do you
then
mean?
women used to be just a homemaker, and then the
Yeah,
dad
that's
used
a
to be
very
just like,
traditional.
I'm like the breadwinner. I make the money. You go home, throw kick. kick off his shoe and just, oh, but my dinner should be
Sit on the
here,
couch.
and
Yeah.
give me my newspaper, and where's my dinner? So I guess
Right.
now again that whole thing is out the window, right? Because like equality, right? Like everyone
I
put
mean,
in,
yeah, but there are people who still live like that, and that's totally fine. That's their prerogative.
yeah,
That's their norm, and that's completely normal. Again, every couple has a different dynamic,
yep, it's
and I
different,
have no disrespect or judgment towards people who live that way. That's just the way that they live. But I think it's important to
right?
state that, because if for
Yeah,
example you came into this relationship and you're like, I expect my dinner to be on the table at 6 p.m. and then I'm going to go like knock out on the couch afterwards. And if I was thinking like, oh, I thought he was going to be like helping me clean the house and wash the
clean and
dishes, and then that's where it's like, oh, but you guys didn't discuss it. So I feel like it's
well,
important to
discuss it
discuss
before you
that.
guys move in, because you guys discuss it now like after, and you're like, oh well, that's just what I thought I
Yeah.
was going to do. Then it's a
Yeah.
little too late for that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where, if you don't discuss certain things, that's where unknown expectations don't get met.
Yeah.
Because it's like everybody naturally has expectations. As much as
Hmm.
we say we shouldn't have expectations
Yeah.
of anybody else but ourselves, it's only natural that we're going to have expectations to some degree.
Right.
So if you're not voicing what your expectations are, then how is the other person able to fulfill them if they don't know what they are?
Right.
I feel like it's really important to discuss them. So yeah, that's definitely something that we've spoken about. And
For
I've
sure.
always told you, I've always said to you like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to hate me." Like when we live together,
You
because you're going to
have.
see how picky I am with how I want to like fold things or how I want to store things. Like
That's
I
fine with me.
just
Hey, you know what? I'm one of those people where if I'm not good at it, I'll be the first one to admit it. And if I could learn from you, then you go lead. I have no problem you leading things. And when it's time for me, when I'm good at, I'll lead. So if you're good at what you do, which clearly I know you are, I'm gonna let you do what you do, and I'm gonna learn from it. If it's never too late, or you're never too old to learn something new. So for me, it's just easy for me to just like, oh, okay, if you could do that better, if you wash the dishes this way, you wash the forks and spoons first, and the bowls later, and then the way you have your own system, right? Everyone has their own
yeah.
system. Everyone grew up
Yes.
differently. So if you could
Yeah.
improve my system, and my system is flawed, or it's okay and yours is better, of course I'm gonna just learn from you.
But I think that's, again, that's the great thing about
Yeah,
relationships, is that naturally two people coming together,
you're right,
9 times out of 10, they've come from different upbringings
for
and
sure.
surroundings, and you guys can learn things from each other and help each other
Hmm.
grow and evolve and improve. So I feel like, yeah, that's like a good thing about relationships, is that as much as I tell you, like, oh my gosh, babe, you're gonna get so annoyed with me with the way that I like things to be, I'm very glad that you're so open. You're like,
Hmm.
cool, like I want to learn about it, like I
Right.
want to see how I can learn from that. I think
Yeah.
that's like a
I just
where I got really lucky.
I don't have the ego, or like I'm not perfect. I don't do things the right way all the time. So it's like, you know what? If someone could do something better than me, then let them. And if it's gonna help me out and help me be better, then yeah, I'll learn.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things that I really love about you, is the fact that you don't have a big ego where you're like, no, like I ain't doing it like that. Like it has to be my way or the highway. Like you're
Hmm.
very open to that. I mean, sometimes I can be a little bit more stubborn in that sense, because I mean, I'm just thinking about like the way my closet is and the way that I fold and hang things. Like,
I think
if
once
I had
we
to change that, I'm like, I don't know if I can function if I have to change that.
I joke with Lizelle. I was like, you know what? Once we live together, I'm probably gonna have to rewash the dishes I just washed, because she probably
No.
want me to wash it again. The way she wants me
No.
to. But you know what? Again, if you show me how you do it, hey, I'll do it that way, because I don't mind. I know how clean your house is, and I know how like well manicured and how well you want to clean things. So I'm like, you know what? If I can clean better, cool, I'll do it. Let me learn from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just something that I naturally developed over time, like living by
Yeah.
myself.
Mm.
Then, of course, like someone else coming into the picture, it changes the whole dynamic
Mm-hmm.
again. So it's all about like pivoting and readjusting, which I have no problem with. So
Right.
looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to the next topic, I think another thing that's really important to discuss as well is how do I put this? Like family and friends
Mm-hmm.
and how you allocate spending time
Right.
with them. Because naturally, of course, as a couple coming together, most of the time, not it's not always this case, but the two of you come from families where naturally you may want to spend time with them. I know it's not like that for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has different situations, but in regards to family and friends, I think it's important to discuss with your partner like how you want to allocate your
Mm-hmm.
time towards that in terms of like first thing that comes to mind is like family and spending time with them during holidays.
Yeah,
Like
holidays.
how do you expect to like what is your expectations when it
Yep.
comes to spending time equally if
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, like usually like over here it's so big, like Thanksgiving is huge,
Mm.
Christmas. So like in New Year. So a lot of times it's like people usually like this year we'll go to your family and next year it's the other family.
Mm.
So or you just throw the party yourself. You don't have to fight to
Right.
going, instead of going
Right,
to each other's family,
exactly.
tell everybody to come to you. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say you definitely need to, talk about that and who's
Mm.
going to what. And because a lot of people are like, yeah, you could lead that into assumption. They're like, oh, I thought we are going to go here this year. Or
Mm. And I feel like it's important to discuss the frequency of that and how what your expectations are in terms of like how often, because if one person feels like, oh, I'm always catering to this person, I'm
mm,
always going to their family
mm-hmm,
events and going to their family outings
right,
and functions, but they're never coming to my family events
exactly,
and functions and outings, then that's where there's an imbalance because
for
the other
sure.
person feels like, well, how come I'm always catering to you, but you're not
Mm-hmm,
doing the same for me? And I feel like it's important to discuss like what your expectations are
yeah,
because again,
mm-hmm,
without that, if the other person doesn't know, if the other person thinks that their partner is cool with always going to their
to
family
just one
gatherings,
side, yeah,
yeah, and they've never said anything about like, oh, I want you to come with me to mine, then that's where disagreements occur. And I feel
mm-hmm,
like it's those are the type of things that are avoidable with communication. And I get it, sometimes you may be in a relationship where you don't necessarily want to go to the other person's like family gatherings.
right.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
But I feel like sometimes there has to be a fair exchange where, as much as you may not want to go and see that other person's family, sometimes you just have to. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes you just have
you're
to
going for them.
do
I mean,
that
if they
for
want to
them.
go, right, you have to do things for your partner. Even like you
Yes.
said, whether you like it or not. I mean, that's if they've done things for you in the past, and it's like not the worst thing, anyways, to just spend time with family. So, like, yeah, you should definitely just go with them because they want to spend time with their family, and it feels imbalanced, right? Yeah, to me, that definitely happened in the past with me, where in the beginning of the relationship, where that other person agreed to go to your family function, and then next thing you know, they stopped going, and it felt lopsided. It was just like me going to their family function all the time, and well, for me, it wasn't hard to like say, hey, because again, I grew up with a big family. I grew up going to like everyone's birthdays, holidays. So it was just so easy for me to just say yes all the time. And then next thing you know,
Mm.
I just noticed I'm like, wait a minute. How come I'm the only one going to these type of your family all the time, and it when I invite you to go to my family, it stopped. And I'm like, I never noticed that. So I to prevent all that stuff, then like you said, you have to talk to your partner about that stuff, like which holidays you're going to, which birthdays, what you're celebrating, who you're
Yeah.
celebrating it with. So that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. And in situations like that, like what you said you had experienced, I think it's important to discuss that with your partner and voice your opinion on how you feel,
Mm-hmm.
because like I explained earlier, it's like for them they may not see any problem with that, and that's fine. But if
Mm-hmm.
they're not aware of how it's making you feel,
Yeah.
then that's where it's like you should be the one to come forward and explain like how it makes you feel and what you
Right.
would like to happen, because again, you're setting this unknown expectation for them to meet that they don't
Mm-hmm.
know has been set for them. So I
Right.
feel like it's important to discuss with them and be like, hey, like I feel like I'm always going to your family events, but you never come to mine. Like, what? Why
Right.
is that? Like, do you not like my family? Like, it's important to
Right.
have communication to kind of get an understanding of like
Mm-hmm.
perhaps there's an underlying reason as to why they don't want to do
Mm-hmm.
things with you and your family. Like there could be a situation that you're unaware of, and I feel
Yeah.
like it's important to open up that space of communication where they feel comfortable enough to be like, okay, yeah, there's a reason as to why
Right.
I don't want to go. Perhaps it is because they just don't want to. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's where you guys need to have a discussion about, I don't know, fair exchange. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm doing this, like, for you, like, do you think that perhaps you could do something for me as well? I feel
Exactly.
like is really important. But again, if you're setting these expectations for your partner that they're not even aware of, how could they possibly meet them? So
Yeah.
it's really important to have communication in that
You're definitely gonna
situation.
get let down because if you guys
Yeah,
make that assumption, you're gonna get let down that every single time if you don't
yeah,
communicate that.
definitely.
Yeah.
So that leads us on to our last topic of
Mm-hmm.
discussion, and this one is probably my favorite of all time because I love talking about this with you,
Mm-hmm.
and that is goals. I
Right.
feel like goals are something that I love to discuss with my partner because I feel like it helps us manifest things into production that we want to achieve.
Right.
There's like so many different like outlets to this and branches to this, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's important to discuss your goals with your partner if we're talking about individual goals, because
Right.
it can also assist you when it
Yeah.
comes to
Mm-hmm.
staying accountable for what you want
Right.
to achieve. And in terms of goals that you two may have together, it can
Mm-hmm.
help you become aligned on that path to achieving that goal.
Right.
I feel like is really important. So for Alan and I, goals are a really big thing that we like to talk about in terms of like what we want to achieve individually and as a team, as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all things that are to do with the future. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got goals for like every day,
We
every week,
do.
every month, every
Yeah.
year, 5 years from now, 10 years
Five
from
to
now.
decade. We definitely
Yeah.
sat down, and that's
Uh-huh.
the thing. It's like we sat down a long time ago, and every year, top of the year, end of the year, we say, hey, you know what? Let's do. We call it New Year's resolution, but we have our own goals with it within what we want to
Mhm.
achieve within this whole year, and we break it down to like 6 months, 3 months, and then now since you helped me out, like there's a weekly goal for me for like food shopping, like what I need
Mhm.
to eat at daily, weekly. So it to me, organizing that, it leaves the a lot of those gray areas on where you're heading in the relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Like
Because
there
now
are no gray areas.
now you know like what's expected and what you'd like to do, and if those goals hasn't, like, you don't reach those type of goals, or you could talk about it and adjust and pivot and say, hey, how can we achieve that? Like, if for me, if it's a health goal and it's like, okay, well, let's step it up, or what are we doing that is not, what are we doing that's not right, or you're eating more carbs this time than that, like there's certain things that you guys can do checkpoints where to say, hey, you know what, where's our goal, where are we, like now it's like almost 6 months out of the year, where are we with our goals, right? And then you could
Yeah.
always check to say, hey, you know what, I was supposed to make this much. Like for us, we're content creators, we were supposed to make this much videos, we're supposed to do this, and you could always go back at your notes and look at what you guys set for yourself within that year or that month.
Yeah, like Alan said, we literally sit down
Yeah.
with a notebook and pen and write down, like, categorize our goals. I think we've spoken about this in a
Yeah.
past episode, but we categorize it in terms of like financial, career, health,
Mm-hmm.
as our relationship goals.
Right.
I can't remember the other one. I'm
Is
pretty
it?
sure we have
You said
five.
finance.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember, but
There's a lot that
but
we list out.
the
That's personal and couple goals in short
yeah.
term, mid-term, and long term that we did.
Yeah, and I feel like you said, it's really important to check in with one another and be like, okay, so like how's things going with this?
Right.
I mean, for example, I think a big one that would probably relate to a lot of couples is like finances. If you
Mm-hmm.
guys have a set goal of like, okay, let's save this sum, like this sum of money by
Mm-hmm.
the end of this year. Um, and if you guys are checking in with each other and being like, okay, how are we going with this? Or even if you have a
Mm-hmm.
plan of like, okay, how are we going to achieve that? I feel like for us, when we do our planning for goals, we have the goal, but it's not just, okay, I want to save this amount of money. We list like the plan on how to achieve
Yeah.
that. So it's not just like, I want to save this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do that by doing this, and that. Goals are important, of course, because it gives you direction. It gives you a destination to head
Mm-hmm.
towards. But the destination without the route is pointless, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you know how to get there if you don't have a plan of like
Right.
how you're going to get to that point? Yeah, goal setting is really big in our relationship, and I feel like for fellow LDR couples, it's definitely something that will bring you guys closer together.
Right.
Regular couples as well, of course, but I feel like being in a relationship where you guys aren't physically together and you're apart, it can often feel as though you guys aren't connected.
Right.
For us, when we always have goals in place, it definitely helps me to feel more connected with you and know
Mm-hmm.
that we're like on the same path and we're aligned and we're both working
Absolutely.
towards the same things. So another thing could be, even like a goal to work towards, could be like a vacay.
Yeah.
If you guys
I
are
was just
planning like,
about to
oh,
say that. I was going to
right,
mention that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So if you guys are planning like, oh, we really want to go on a summer vacay.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 6 months to save. Let's save for this. We want to stay at this place. We want to go to this destination and we want to do these activities. I mean, I think we did that like this is something we did very early on in our
For sure.
relationship, because I can even think of, like, go back and think about like when we were planning to meet for the first time.
The first trip for sure, because we did so
Yeah.
much and we
Uh-huh.
planned it so well. And we winged
Mm.
some of the stuff, but at least we every day we did something, you know. So like
Yeah.
we definitely planned a lot for that first trip.
Yeah. So those are definitely like big goals that can be
Yeah.
worked towards. But I feel like for us, I know every couple's dynamic is different
Hmm.
and not everybody does this. But what works for Alan and I is even having like a weekly plan. I've said this
Hmm.
so many times, and I'm pretty sure people who listen to us regularly know
Yeah.
that out of the two of us, I'm definitely the planner. Like, I
Yeah.
naturally like to plan things, and I like to have a weekly plan of like, okay, what's the week looking like? Like, what do we need to do this week? What's the plan for this week? What do we need to get done? I like telling you a viewpoint of like, okay, this is what I want to do this week, babe.
Hmm.
And you actually check in with me and be like, hey, like, how's your week going? Like,
Yeah.
have you done this yet? Or when are you going to do this thing that you said you were going to do? And it keeps me accountable. And vice versa. I always ask you like, oh, what are your plans for tomorrow? Like, what's
I,
your day looking
I'm
like
the
for
more
tomorrow?
forgetful one, so I tell you, hey, remind me to like do a doctor's appointment or remind me it's going to be for
Right.
this day because I'm going to forget. And
Yeah.
yeah, it helps out. She keeps me accountable all the time because if half the things I do in a week, I wouldn't remember if she don't remind me.
I
So
swear,
it's
I have
like,
to like plan for myself
yeah.
and for.
But to be honest, since the beginning, I'd say because of how you set the tone that way, that for
Mm,
me, like you know how we used to have a meal plan. I can get into the motion of like knowing what I want that week. You know, like
yeah.
within our goal setting within the week, I'd say I'd like 6 months ago, I'm much better today. Goal
Yeah.
setting, you know, because I
Yeah.
definitely wasn't something I would do, or even like
Yeah.
setting goals like that or planning. So
Hmm.
I'd say for sure I got so much better within time.
Definitely, yeah. I would say so for sure. And yeah, I feel like I'm just thinking about like long distance relationship couples.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think it is important to sit down and plan like what your future looks like with your partner.
hmm,
I've always said this before, and I know some people may disagree with me, but I feel as though there's no point to be in a long distance relationship without an end goal
for
because I
sure.
don't think I feel like it's very difficult. I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I feel like it's very difficult to be in a strong functioning relationship if there's no plan for you to come together
Hmm.
at some
Right.
point. Like if we stayed long distance forever and I'm just over here chilling, you're over there chilling, I don't think it
It's not gonna
could
work out
work in the long
for
run.
sure.
And I mean, COVID definitely put a spanner in the works for us because we
Yes, it
had a
did.
very different plan of how we wanted things to go
Hmm.
and where we would be at in this point in time. But I think, regardless, it's just all about like, scheduling and pivoting and readjusting and being like,
Hmm.
okay, so that didn't work out because the world went into a pandemic. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do now? Yeah, for long distance couples, it's important to plan out together, like, okay, where do you see this going? And I think
Hmm.
for us, I was definitely the one that like instigated that very
For
early.
sure.
I was like,
Uh
what do you
huh.
view this as becoming? Because for me, I didn't want to get into a relationship
Hmm.
where things were like unknown or I felt like I was wasting my time. So I was very open with Alan from the very beginning to say like, hey, I really like you, but I don't want to be strung along and I
You're
don't
right.
want to waste my time. So if you don't see anything happening with
Yeah.
this, let me know and it's cool. But I just want to let you know how I'm feeling
Yeah.
and I would like to know how you're feeling
Yeah.
too. And if we're not on the same page, it's totally fine.
No, that's important. Again, I it's not that I held back. I just didn't initiate that conversation.
Yeah.
But I was at that point where I was like, wait, what are you talking about? I feel the same way. I probably didn't. I just didn't say anything. Like,
I think for you it
wait, are
was
you
more
trying to?
assumed.
Exactly. That's what it was. It was
Yeah.
definitely assumed.
Yeah. Whereas I was like the
Yeah,
I was
you're
definitely
straight
more
up.
like a communication is key and I'm being straight
You're
up with you
straight
and
up.
telling
Yeah.
you.
It actually helped me out in the long run because now, again, because of those type of things, now I'm a lot more open to tell you how I feel and what's going on and how, what, when things happen, it's easy for me to just voice it out now instead of like holding things in. And growing up, that's all I did was hold things in because I didn't want to, like, for me, I'm so clumsy. I'm so, like, I don't want to mess up. So I just held a lot of things in growing up. So I didn't know how to say
Yeah.
things, and I I don't know. But now it's a lot easier because we spoke so much, we communicate so much. It's easier for me to just tell you how
Mm.
I feel.
Yeah, and I think it was like it was important for me to kind of let you know like from the beginning like
Right.
hey, this is how I'm feeling and if it's not what you want like it's totally fine. Like I never wanted Alan to feel like he wasn't like because you talk about how you were scared to like mess up on certain things
Mm,
or whatever and it's like hey like this is an open space, it's okay to
mm,
make mistakes, like I'm still going to be here, but I just wanted to know that
yeah.
we were kind of like on the same page with things because I feel like that's where people get into situations where they're like, oh, I don't know if he likes me, oh, I don't know if she likes me, I don't know
Hmm.
if it's like, well, why can't we just be open and be like, yeah,
And say
this
it
is
right.
this is what this is how I feel. This is what I
Hmm.
would like to happen. Do you feel the same? If not, it's okay. Like there's no judgments coming from here. And I
Right.
feel like yeah, it's important to again, like naturally people do have expectations, but it's also important to not hold those expectations against that person, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Hmm.
So I feel like it's just important to discuss like what
Yeah.
your plans are in the future in terms of being like a long distance couple, where you see it going,
Hmm.
if you see something coming of it and what your plans are, like who's going where or
Hmm.
whatever. I feel like it's really important.
And honestly, if you don't communicate these type of things, like things change, like you said earlier, right? We're in the middle. We're still in a pandemic. Hopefully, people think
Yeah,
that we're like not in the end of it. Like we're literally still in the middle. We had tons
we
of
are.
plans last year and this year, and to me, what I call those things is it's not we're not taking L's. We're taking it's called delayed W's, right? All you're doing is pivoting. You're like, okay, well,
Mm,
if this happens, because we said that in the beginning when I left and I proposed to you, I was like, well, we're planning to see each other in August. If that doesn't happen, let's go here. Let's go December. If the country and the world still shut down, how about like in 3 months or 4 months? So you have to constantly communicate and pivot and adjust, and really that's really what we've been doing. That's even how this podcast came about. We adjusted to what happened. Like we couldn't see each other, we couldn't vlog, we couldn't do all the stuff that we planned to do, and this is the best next thing that we thought about, and this is the birth of the podcast.
yeah. So again, like at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
just all about
Yep.
communication. It always
That's it.
goes back to that. I feel like it's very important to communicate with your partner what your wants and needs and expectations are, and to
Right.
do it in a way that you're both aware that it's an open space to discuss
Hmm.
things without any preconceived notions or judgments from the other person. I feel like it's very important to just open up that space and be like, hey, this is what I
Right.
would like. Would you like the same thing? If not, let's pivot, readjust. Or I feel like that's how you really determine whether you are compatible with
If
somebody.
not,
Do you know what I
you know
mean?
what? It's funny how you brought that up. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I I found out the reason why I love Lizelle so much is because majority of the stuff that she said she liked to do is stuff I wanted to do. So I was like, oh, it's we're so compatible that way. Where, well, will she want something or she doesn't want anything? It's like I never had a problem with it because it's something that I like to as well. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was in the beginning. We spoke so much. I got to know you so well. I got to know what you like and don't like, how we should communicate with each other, and it helped out in the long run.
Definitely. Yeah. So that's pretty much it, you guys. Those
Yep,
are things things you should discuss if you're planning to get
you have
married,
to
but not
take
really.
notes.
I mean, I feel like these are things that naturally would come up in discussions
Hmm.
in relationships, regardless of whether you get plan to get married or not. Just if you're in like a committed relationship, I
Yep.
feel like these are naturally things that would come up in discussions, and it is important to again communicate with one another, talk about your feelings, what your expectations are, but don't hold your expectations against the other person in an
Right.
unhealthy way.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That is everything that we wanted to talk about in today's episode of the One Day Podcast. Again, we apologize for the fact that we haven't been very consistent lately. We're trying to get back on that schedule.
Hmm.
But if there's anything that you guys would like us to specifically talk about
Hmm.
and discuss, comment down below and let us know if you're
Yes,
watching us here on
please.
YouTube. And if you are listening on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more of our weekly episodes, because they're going to be weekly, you
For
guys. We're
sure.
back onto it now that I'm like all healed and better.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's it, my love. Would you like to say anything else?
Like you said, if there's, I mean, those are the topics that we said, like the 6 things, right? If there's anything else that couples want to talk about or you need to talk about before you jump into marriage and a serious relationship, just comment down below. We would love to hear from you
Hmm.
guys.
Definitely, yeah. So, that being said, that's it from us here at the One Day Podcast. Thank you for spending part of your day with us, and we shall talk to you guys next time.
Deuces.
Bye, guys.